Welcome to the Patriotic Pulpit. There's a story that's coming out of the UK, which is one of those stories that really doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but it is about the fact that in the UK, they're punishing thought crimes and they're threatening thought criminals, even those in the United States, including, of course, as one of the reporters asked, one of the UK London Metropolitan Police individuals. He said, how about Elon Musk? And he acted like Elon Musk was even under the target. So I want to talk about that. But before I do, and then freedom of speech, of course, we want to speak about freedom of speech and what that entails and where does it come from, this totalitarian drive to curtail freedom of speech. Before I do that, however, I just cannot help but log in on Kamala Harris and her presidential run. It is absolutely incredible. I think we're at the third week that she has not taken any questions from reporters. She has not had any press conferences. She has not spoken outside of a teleprompter for 3 weeks after she has become the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party. That's absolutely stunning to me. But what is more stunning and what is more amazing is that seemingly is perfectly fine with Democrats. I cannot, I just am always at a loss for words, literally here, at how the Democratic Party has absolutely not only lost its way, but become so enwrapped in totalitarian thought and so enwrapped in thought control and control of people and the curtailing of freedom and the stopping of freedom that they're willing to go along with Kamala Harris in her totalitarian regime and put us right on the communist map. That's exactly what this is all about. Now, many people say, well, she's flip-flopping on different issues. She was against fracking, now she's for fracking. And she was for open borders, now she's for strengthening the borders. She was for non-oil, and now she's for tapping into oil. And on it goes. But all of that is so much smoke and mirrors. I urge you to think about how Barack Obama got into office initially. David Axelrod, one of his chief advisors, tells the story in his book. David Axelrod tells us that Barack Obama was in favor of homosexual marriage from the very beginning. As a matter of fact, there's evidence that Obama himself is a homosexual, and belonged to homosexual clubs in Chicago. And that's very evident. That's been publicized, and he was for homosexual marriage from the beginning. However, the Democrats knew that in order to get one of their men into office, one of their operatives, one of the puppets that George Soros moved, in order to get that pro-communist, pro-Stalinist man in office, they're going to have to lie and cover up. And consequently, when he was asked by reporters regarding, this was before his first run, Barack Obama was asked about marriage, whether it's between a man and a woman only. And he said, at this time, I believe it's between a man and a woman only. Then after he got into the second term, he reversed courses and said, you know what, I've rethought about it. All so much lie and so much ridiculous fanfare, because as we all knew, actually from the beginning, those who do a little reading on the subject knew that Obama was in favor of homosexual marriage, but he was not going to be able to get into office. The Democrats were not going to be able to hold power if he came in flying in on the red carpet with that kind of stance in his background. So they whitewashed it. He lied to the American people. And when I mentioned about David Axelrod came out and told us in his book that that's exactly what they did. That is, that they insisted on Obama taking a different stance in front of the American people in order to get in office. And then when you get in there, then you can do what you want to do. And that's exactly what they did. And so now we have homosexual marriage. But it was all because the American people are not looking behind the scenes at what is going on, what these people stand for, and not realizing the Democrats lie all the time. And it's completely a whitewash of the record. Same thing going on with Kamala Harris now. We know what she stands for. She's not flip-flopping on anything. She is absolutely lying. I almost resent the way that people say, well, she's flip-flopped on this issue, she's flip-flopped on that issue. She hasn't flip-flopped on anything. She is a totalitarian, communist-style, Marxist type of wannabe dictator. That's what she wants to be. And all that she's doing now is putting up a smokescreen, and that's why she's refusing to go before cameras. And what makes me so sad is that the American people, the Democrats particularly, are fine with this. They don't even care whether or not what she's for here or there. All they want to know is if she's going to go along with their totalitarian-minded ideas, which includes thought control, which we're talking about. But it is so typical of the Democrats to do this, and it just is so disconcerting to see this going on in the political realm. And according to the polls, she's doing pretty well for someone who hasn't come out with one policy decision and one policy statement or one policy stance. It's absolutely incredible. We know what she stands for. We know exactly what she stands for. I think I heard Nikki Haley saying, yeah, we know what she stands for. And I thought, well, you know what? She's exactly right. We do know that. She doesn't need to get out and say anything. What she's going to say is a lie that has been crafted by the Democratic deep state machine. Incidentally, I had a person tell me, well, several Democrats around this area tell me, oh, there's no such thing as a deep state, blah, blah, blah. You know what? The New York Times even recognized that there's a deep state, and they were glad that it existed in order to get Trump out of the way. They admitted a deep state. Anyway, all of that simply to point out that one of the things and one of the elements of totalitarian regimes and totalitarian governments is thought control and freedom of speech curtailing, punishing thought crimes. And that's going on right now. Matter of fact, the global government that is emerging, United Nations has always been about a global government. That's what it's always been about. It was never about just peace. It was about soaking the American taxpayer and sending it overseas. That's exactly what's happened. Now the global government, the gloves are off, and they're telling us we're going to have to curtail freedom of speech. So this is an article that appeared in Western Journal. They tell us it's been a long-known fact that the UK's dysfunctional legal system wants to punish thought criminals. That's right, because they're right in line with global government totalitarian regime. That's already problematic for those who value individual freedoms, but why stop at those who speak inside the borders of the UK? And this is where the story gets interesting. It might be the most deluded and grandiose threat yet made by a sitting British state official since riots have consumed the country over the past few weeks, which really is saying something if you're following, that is, if you've been following, not simply NBC, ABC, CBS, you have to go behind the mainstream media, which is really the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party, that is the emerging socialist party in America. You have to go back and see what the real story is. And if you follow the story, then you know that the chief of London's Metropolitan Police has warned those who have opinions what's happening in the UK and post them on social media. Have opinions is a group that posts conservative ideas on social media. And even if those individuals are abroad, that is, if they live in the United States, the UK tells us they're going to come after people in this country, namely Elon Musk. Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. Here's the backstory. So to bring us up to speed, the Wall Street Journal notes on July 29th, 3 girls between the ages of 6 and 9, what a horrific story, were killed by a 17-year-old individual at a Taylor Swift-themed dance event. A day later, white residents began rioting in Southport, Liverpool suburb where it happened. Within days, white mobs rioted throughout England and the UK, often facing non-white and far-left counter-protesters who made the violence worse and worse and were rioters themselves. Now, the media, the police, and British politicians all tended to de-emphasize this event. That's just like it happened in Charlottesville, North Carolina. They wanted to de-emphasize that there were people that were there, non-white, and pushing against whites, and so it was a racial clash. But they didn't want to talk about that. Well, same thing here. Initially, the politicians thought this was mostly caused by disinformation and misinformation about the underage suspect, including reports that he was a foreign-born Muslim who had illegally immigrated to Britain aboard a boat. But later, when they took the unprecedented step of releasing the boys' information, you'll note that is an unprecedented step. They don't want to tell who it is because it gets everybody excited. But it revealed that he was a Welsh-born youth of Rwandan parents, and that there was no evidence that the stabbing was terror-related. By that they mean related to Islam. It turned out that the riots had less to do with specifics of the crime than general discontent. That is, the people are rioting, but it turned out that they were rioting because generally they're discontented. In a paywalled article at the UK Spectator, commentator Douglas Murray does an admirable job of spelling out what the Biden administration might call the root causes of the resentment turned to violence. Now, here's the basic bottom line, and that is unfettered immigration encouraged in the UK and encouraged in America has brought about this general discontent, brought about unemployment in the UK, it brings about unemployment in the United States, and it brings about general discontent. And it wasn't just that the British government wanted to crack down on the rioters, which is good, though that seems to imply that they only wanted to crack down on the white rioters, because after all, if you crack down on the minority-related rioters, then you're racist, and everybody's got to watch out for being racist. So that's what they started to do. But really, the point is that the Britain wanted to crack down on thought crime, particularly that expressed on social media. So everyone from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to the police who will presumably be doing the arresting has been very vague about what this thought crime might entail. One imagines everyone who points out the unpopular root causes of the violence will end up in their sights, and that's exactly what will happen. What is a thought crime, and what thoughts are we going to make criminal, and what thoughts are we going to allow? Thus, we have Sir Mark Rowley, head of the Metropolitan Police, telling Sky News he is absolutely willing to extradite, now get this, bring them from another country, what he calls keyboard warriors who run afoul of authorities. From color to cut, Tangles can do it all, and they've been doing it all with award-winning style from Parker Square for more than 20 years. The esteemed staff at Tangles Salon has studied at prestigious academies in New York City, Los Angeles, and Toronto, Canada, specializing in cuts, color, extensions, and more. With creativity, experience, and 8 master stylists and colorists, Tangles Salon can take your look from ordinary to extraordinary. Visit us at Tangles Salon in Wichita Falls, Texas, or online at tangles.com. His statement is, we will throw the full force of the law at the people, and whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you. So the reporter then asked the question, how about the likes of Elon Musk? Commenting on and what he would do when it comes to dealing with people who are whipping up this kind of behavior from behind the keyboard, who may be in a different country, and he specifically asked about the likes of Elon Musk. And here is what the Metropolitan Police of the UK, Sir Mark Rowley, had to say. Being a keyboard warrior does not make you safe from the law. You can be guilty of offenses of incitement, of stirring up racial hatred. There are numerous terrorist offenses regarding the publishing of material, he responded. All of these offenses are in play if people are provoking hatred and violence on the streets, and we will come after those individuals just as we will physically confront on the streets the thugs and all of the bad guys who are causing the problems for our communities. So this is not an idle threat for a number of reasons, the Western Journal notes, especially concerning Elon Musk. First of all, as it was previously noted, if you read the Western Journal, you note this, the ex-impresario Tesla SpaceX industry, Elon Musk Titan, has been fairly vocal on his own platform about the way the UK is using the riots as a pretext to criminalize certain kind of speech. And here is what Musk tweeted. He says, this is actually happening, and then here's the news story from Sky News. Quote, we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media to look for this material and then follow up with arrests. The Director of Public Prosecutions of England and Wales warns that sharing online material of riots could be an offense. That, of course, is the people who are exempt from that are the Black Lives Matter, the socialists, the Marxists. That's a Marxist organization. The Muslims, they're, of course, all exempt. What they're all, of course, after is white people who get upset about their countries, the countries that the majority of the population are in, they're upset about the open immigration policies. Those are the people they're after. So here's another reason it needs to be taken seriously. Social media has been targeted with an unusual zeal as a whipping boy in this case by politicians who have not shown the slightest inclination to defend personal freedom in the past. And that is, they're coming after social media. They're going to curtail the freedom of speech. And this is why, of course, President Trump went to Truth Social and other forms, other platforms, because we all know the Facebook and other social media platforms, they absolutely curtail the freedom of speech. Prime Minister Starmer has shown a willingness to use new authoritarian techniques to root them out, specifically those on social media, and particularly those in charge of it. When it came to the companies, he said that they were allowing violent disorder and it was being whipped up online. So follow that to the natural progression to Rowley's threat to extradite those abroad or arrest them if they set foot in the UK or on UK soil. And you can see why Musk would make a tempting target indeed. Now, even if attempting to get an extradition order for any great number of everyday Americans who spoke up about the proximal causes of rioting and the giddiness of public officials, writes the Western Journal, they use the occasion for the encroachment of freedom of speech and the encroachment of freedom from a Big Brother style governance. If that is what's going on, and that is what's happening also here in America. So I want to reflect for a few moments on freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, as you know, connected in the First Amendment of our Constitution, alongside of freedom of religion. That's what our founders considered to be the very fundamentals of freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to worship, freedom to assemble, whether it be for worship purposes or not. So now I want you to note several things regarding that. Every single system of despotism, totalitarianism, communism, Marxism, every single system of totalitarian, despotic style governments has enforced speech codes. From ancient Rome to Babylon to Persia, all the Asiatic kingdoms of the ancient world. How about the Roman Catholic Church? People say, how about Christianity? This is where people make a huge, huge mistake. The Roman Church is not New Testament Christianity. The Roman Catholic Church has nothing to do with New Testament Christianity. It is an apostasy from the faith. It is actually the result of taking a few ideas from the Bible, from the New Testament as well as the Old Testament, wedding them together in a totalitarian political regime. And today, the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, is the smallest state in the world. It is an actual operating state. The Roman Church is a totalitarian government. It is not representative of Christianity at all. This is one reason why we need to have better teaching in public regarding what is New Testament Christianity. The Roman Church is a wedding between the religion and the state. That's why the Roman Catholic Church persecuted, prosecuted, and killed Christians, those who wanted to have the Bible alone, such as the William Tyndales of the world. They burned them at the stake. Now that's what the Roman Catholic Church did, because it's a totalitarian regime that is connected with communism. It's another form of communism. Well, how about the Middle Ages? The Middle Ages show that's the case. So this misteaching regarding all of this, that somehow Christianity is to be associated with thought and speech control, which is what's going on in our country, comes about because people don't understand their history. And so every single despotic, totalitarian government, every single one, is connected with thought and speech control. North Korea, Vietnam, Cuba, they all operate on coercion. Communism also is irreligious. Now, less understood is that this stance, irreligion, that's basically atheism. Karl Marx was an atheist, a hardened atheist, as was Friedrich Engels, both Jews who have become so atheistic. So it's less understood that this is integral to the system, as all totalitarian movements have atheism at the very core of the center, this despotic practice. Despotic practices come out of atheistic worldviews. Modern systems of totalitarian governments also operate despotism the same way. The Bolsheviks, Soviet Union, China, South America, Marxist regimes. And so many people get it completely wrong here. Free societies thrive on freedom of speech. Now, that does not mean freedom of speech is unlimited. We know that there's such a thing as plagiarism. There's such a thing as libel. There's such a thing as slander. And incidentally, entertainment doesn't cover it. I talked in a recent podcast about the Olympic opening ceremonies, how it was mocking Christianity, celebrating Satan, celebrating Dionysius, an ancient Greek false god of the drink and party. All of that was mocking Christianity, the way they portrayed it. And people came back on Facebook and said, well, it's only art. It's only a form of expression. It doesn't make any difference whether it's art or whatever you might classify it as, or theater. It is still mocking. This is what we need to understand, and that is all of these freedom of speech. If people want to oppose Christianity, well and good. But I say, let's have debate. Let's discuss it. We'll be happy to discuss it, but just get up and mocking something. See, that's not, entertainment doesn't cover it. So there are some curtailing of freedom of speech. It's not complete freedom. It's not unlimited freedom of speech. Now, why is this the case? Why is freedom of speech to discuss openly ideas about government, why is that so important? Because freedom of speech centers upon the worth of the individual. Think about it. For freedom to exist, there has to be a certain intrinsic assumption about the worth of the individual, the respect that is owed to all human beings, the need to limit the compulsions that can be used by one person against another. And when such assumptions are firmly held and embodied in the political institutions, freedom to a greater or lesser degree can flourish. And where they're rejected, where these assumptions are rejected, freedom will never rise in the first place, or they will be progressively lost where they once existed. So what's going on in our country right now? Do we have more freedom of speech, or are we feeling less freedom of speech? Obviously, the latter. Are we not experiencing, through big tech and social media, the curtailing of freedom of speech, and instead we're seeing the open mocking of Christianity? That's exactly what's taking place. Why is that the case? Because we have drifted into a collectivist-style government. Collectivism, all forms of it, are always connected to curtailing freedom of speech. Collectivism is when you take a group, make that a priority over the individual. So just like BLM, Black Lives Matter, they based it upon diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is equity? Equity is the demand for unequal treatment by government depending upon what class or group that you belong to, in order that we might achieve racial parity, racial equalness. It is a demand. That's amazing that we've moved from equal treatment to demand for unequal treatment in order that we might have or achieve racial parity. That is exactly the definition of equity. That's why collectivism is a species of control, a species of slavery against the freedom. Where does it derive? you might note that the Founding Fathers, with one voice, all of them, connected freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom to worship. They connected it to Christianity of the Bible. And at the same time, they were fleeing from the Roman Catholic Church of the Middle Ages. And the Roman Catholic Church is how, when they fled from it, that's how America was actually founded, the Massachusetts Bay Colony. The reason we had freedom, and we've had it so long in our country, is because we have been a Christian nation. And as we drift toward collectivism with Black Lives Matter or Kamala Harris, the Democratic Party, which is basically collective in its orientation now, that's the degree to which we're going to lose freedom of speech, just like the UK minister wants to come over here and arrest Elon Musk. Well, I tell you what, America needs to be ready if England wants to come over and invade again.